what needs to be saved, if it is saved by renationalisation, if that is the path that is ultimately the one that the government chooses, as opposed to just stepping in for a while for some kind of bridging loan before another private company comes in, a lot of this is going to fall on the taxpayers' shoulders. Taxpayers who are already struggling to pay bills. So let me finish the thought, and then feel free to come and jump on it. It's fine. But the tax burden is going to go up as a result of this. And has anybody been able to make steel manufacture in this country profitable? Who could come in and do that? When could it? How soon could it be profitable?
Well, if we structure our economy so we're not giving advantages to foreign importers. I mean, the coal industry was destroyed by basically opening the door to the cheap coal to supply our fire stations, our coal-fired electricity generation stations. So we sacrificed all that mining skill set to become basically vulnerable to foreign imports. And we did that with coal. We destroyed it. The miners' strike. I mean, the miners back when they were striking under Maggie Thatcher were earning about £42,000 a year, which was a fairly considerable wage. They weren't striking over wages. They were striking over to protect the industry from being lost. We're doing just this. Watch, rinse, repeat for everything that gave this country a value. We sacrificed by this globalist agenda.
Okay.
And what I can't understand how we can not keep our skill sets alive, because eventually we will be held ransom for being incapable of doing anything ourselves anymore.
Okay, I mean, but what you're suggesting, and I'm just very, very briefly, because we've got a lot of calls on this, is the kind of Trump tariff playbook, which is, tariff the pips out of anybody wishing to export to this country, because we've got to make our stuff cheaper.
Well, or you pay what is a proper value for the goods that you have. I mean, if you live in a disposable society, which is what we have now, nothing has a value anymore beyond. The Chinese have been selling us landfill for decades, worthless pieces of junk that were not fit for purpose. And we've fallen into this ridiculous mindset of everything is disposable. If you want a sustainable economy and a sustainable environment, you have to make it sustainable.
Okay, Robert. Okay, Robert. Thank you very much. David has been in touch on email. I don't see how a single steelworks makes any difference to our security, as it'll never be able to produce all the steel we need, and if it can't make it all, then you might as well buy it in. Jenny says, at last the British government has woken up to the vital importance of having an independent British steel industry. Let's hope the Scunthorpe plant can be rescued, and a sensible method of continuing the life of the British steel industry is found quickly. The mention of national security will surely concentrate minds, says Jenny. Guy on WhatsApp, it is infuriating to hear minister after minister talk rubbish about the need for virgin steel. There's no difference between the chemical composition of virgin and recycled steel. The issue is most of the country's scrap gets sent overseas for recycling. Keep that metal here in the UK and you'll solve much of the supply problem. 03700 100 444. Let's go to the very patient Steve Beadle, who's called us from Southampton and been waiting very patiently to have his turn. Steve, I appreciate that. Thank you very much indeed. What have you made of what you've heard so far?
Well, good afternoon, Anita. Some very interesting comments have come out, and what Jeremy said is quite true, I think. And basically, I think the government has failed us on, there is no published, or they haven't informed us of any strategy in what this country needs to produce its own steel. The main cost of making steel is energy, and we need to somehow drive down the cost of energy with, I think there's already processes in place that could use power purchase agreements between the generator and the end user to negotiate an extremely cheaper cost of renewables. So my strategy would be that the government needs to save Scunthorpe as a standby to keep the coal, keep it going until we get the electric arc furnaces going.
Yeah.
And then use the cheaper, if we can negotiate it, energy to create all of the elements needed to make virgin steel from electric arc furnaces. Because you need lots of power, you need hydrogen, and you need some specialist pellets that you'd have to import anyway in the way of iron ore.
On this issue of power, is another interesting. I keep saying I was chatting to all these people. I was at some really poignant dinner party last night. I was doing a PM last night, which is why I was talking to the steel manufacturer I mentioned a little while ago, and I was also speaking to Liam Byrne, who is chair of the House of Commons Business and Trade Select Committee, and he was all for coming up with some kind of new tariff for, energy tariff for industry. Now, if a government is to do that, the cost of that has to be falling somewhere. Where does the cost of that fall, Steve? Because I'll tell you for one thing, you've got taxpayers who, are already being told, look, to keep Scunthorpe alive, there is going to be some pain in the short term. We're all going to have to pay a bit more to keep it up and running. And there are other demands, and we're living in an uncertain world. And if we subsidise big industry, who's going to pay for that, Steve?
Well, I don't think we're going to subsidise it. We're going to go to the energy producers and negotiate a lower cost. It's going to be a steady stream of power that's required for these electric arc furnaces. And I think it's in our national interest to reduce the costs down. And
why would an energy company do that?
Because basically, a lot of times, I haven't got the statistics, but a lot of time the government is paying the energy suppliers to turn off the windmills or the wind turbines, because the infrastructure can't cope with the additional power that's been generated. So if we had a dedicated line or a power structure that could take the wind that's produced in the North Sea and direct it more into the industry that's local nearby, they would have a steady stream of income. It's not their costs are calculated over a set time.
That sounds like a really neat solution, but how long to get that up and running, would you say?
Well, it's not. But the strategy is we've got to keep the blast furnaces going because we need to produce some steel. Is the time involved in producing or manufacturing the electric arc furnaces on the site and creating the infrastructure to create the power lines to it. So we've got some time to go. The problem is keeping them going for the time being with a strategy of creating an environmentally good, clean carbon generated steel.
Yeah, okay. I get where you're coming from. Thank you very much. 03700 100 444. David's been very patient, and I'm going to come to you very shortly, but Ian Owens takes the prize for most patient man on the phone in so far. You've been waiting a long time, Ian. It's a complicated thing, and that's why I'm spending some time with people, just to get them to explain to those who aren't in the industry, lay people, what this all means and what this could all mean, the implications of all this could be. Where are you coming at this from?
I live in South London, Bromley.
Okay, and?
Well, many years ago, I was a lorry driver, and we helped to build Lanwern Steelworks, which closed. I remember the big steelworks on the Isle of Sheppey closing, but that was mainly scrap metal. I worked near a company in the Isle of Dogs that melted aluminium. They used to get old jetliners, aircraft, and they used to melt them down for scrap. I remember Corby closing. We've decimated the industry in this country, probably down to Thatcher. She had the big thing about unions, as you know. And all those coal mines that used to provide the coal for the blast furnaces at Port Talbot, Lanwern and the other, there was 2 or 3 companies on South Wales producing steel, and they've all gone. And what we've done, we've sent all these jobs overseas. We've said how wonderful we are. We're cutting down our carbon output by sending these jobs out there. All we've done is exported the jobs. We've sent the money over there. We've paid them to produce the goods, Trump's got exactly the same problem out in America because all these goods now are being produced out in from the States. They've exported their jobs. I remember going on holiday to the Dominican years ago, and there was a sign that came up on the side of this big building, "Hungry, eat your foreign car." And I think that says it all. And that's the road we're going down. MG now is produced out in China. BYD, which is another company. I saw a bus, would you believe, a London bus with BYD written on the front of it, one of their electric buses. And they're even going after that market in the UK. They're planning on being the world's largest car producer in the next 5 years. I mean, you could say it's over, but we can't let Scunthorpe go. Those jobs, that industry is so important. If we've got a toe in the water, that's got to be it. We've got to keep it going.
Okay. Ian, thank you. I mean, one thing we haven't touched on, and I could slightly hear some emotion creeping into Ian's voice, is just what it does to an area, town, a city that is around an industrial plant, be it, steelworks or coal mines or oil refineries or any of the places that we've seen many closures in the recent past. What does it do to an area, and how long does it take for an area to recover or repurpose itself, or does it ever recover? If you want to have your say on that, 03700 100 444. For now, though, I'm just going to take one more on this Scunthorpe big debate that's going on in Parliament at the moment. So just to remind you, it has passed through the Commons stage now. So 3 hours of debate there were, and this special bill that was brought in to help keep British Steel in Scunthorpe open, that plant, those blast furnaces, it's cleared its Commons stages and it's now being debated in the House of Lords. What next? Well, we wait and see. We're going to take one more on this for now, but if you do want to have your say, just keep calling in. We'll circle back to it, but I know a lot of you want to talk about affordable housing as well, and we'll do that next. David Hall, calling us from Wolverhampton. David, thank you for waiting. Thanks for hanging on. Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
That's all right. Good afternoon, Anita. What I want to say is people have the wrong idea. A blast furnace is a totally different process to an electric arc furnace. You cannot make virgin steel in an electric arc furnace. A blast furnace takes iron ore, limestone, which is a flux, and coke, which is made from coal, and it goes through a process which turns it into pig iron. And pig iron can be used to make a whole variety of steels. You can't reverse the process. If you have stainless steel, you can't turn it back into something else. And to close the steelworks in Scunthorpe down would be a disaster, not only for the area but for the country. We need to be able to produce virgin steel which we can use. I mean, Putin would be jumping for joy if he knew that this country couldn't make tanks and aircraft and ships. He'd be jumping for joy. And are we going to rely on somebody like Donald Trump, who changes his mind every other day? If the taxpayer takes on the running of the Scunthorpe plant, it could be a good thing. As I say, this government wastes billions and billions of pounds. This could be putting money into something which would keep the area around Scunthorpe relatively profitable, and it would save the security of our country, where we'd have to rely on buying steel from other countries, and it wouldn't make any difference to the amount of impact on the environment it would have, because it would be made somewhere else.
Right, that's the point somebody else made. Can I just circle back to what one of our first callers said, David? I'd just love you to deal with it. So our first caller, Jeremy, who was involved in the chorus sale many moons ago, he said, when has renationalisation ever worked? Who can make this work? Do you have an answer?
Well, I would say put it in a similar situation as the National Health Service. The National Health Service isn't there to make money. The National Health Service is for the benefit of the country, and the steel industry must be looked at in the same way. We cannot continue in a situation where we're the only country in the G7 that can't make our own steel. Mm-hmm. I mean, and we have to use scrap steel from somewhere else, which is totally unsuitable for what it might be intended for. And I just think the whole idea is insanity. They're a country the size of Britain, and we can't run a steel plant. We haven't got the money to run a steel plant. It's insane.
Okay, David, thank you, and thank you for hanging on for as long as you did. Right, more thoughts coming in, and as I say, I'm really very happy to circle back to this if you want to talk about it. Neil's been on email saying, when I was designing steel bridges, we had to accept steel from anywhere in the EU. If it met the standards in the manufacturing country, we were not allowed to stipulate British-made steel. British steel was not competitive against, say, Italian steel. It's been a downward trend for us since then. Howard on email. I think the present situation would be madness for the BBC not to have, for the UK not to have its own independent steel-making facilities. It'll support I will support the government right up to nationalisation. I'm not interested in blame. We are where we are, and surely the way trade and world politics is going, this is a different world, and the writing is clearly on the wall. And Anonymous here on text, closing the plant may make economic sense, but doesn't make political sense. Keep it running on Chinese coal, which can be switched off at short notice, unlike UK coal, until we can power it with cheap renewable energy and it becomes competitive. Thank you very much from that. Let's talk about housing for a little while, shall we? Because the question that was asked on the programme, it was a questioner who stood up and said, look, she was subsidising her NHS worker daughter because rental properties were so unaffordable. And it sort of opened the discussion to affordable housing. What should we do that we're not doing? What should politicians be grappling that they haven't grappled? Who's our first caller on this? I'll tell you what, Susan, it is you. My eyes have fallen on you, Susan Curtis, calling us from North Somerset.
Hello, Anissa.
Hello, welcome. So tell me what is the situation with you or those you love and trying to get on the housing ladder?
Okay. I mean, we are in a privileged position in that we've been able to support our twins to get their foot on the housing ladder. But I'm really conscious that so many people can't do that. And I see that in the context of this growing gap between those who can and those who can't, which is not, in my opinion, is not healthy for our society. Mm. But I was particularly interested in what Paul Johnson had to say when he said that, you know, he obviously recognised that we do need to build more houses, which clearly we do, but that we need to sort out the tax system of housing, because I don't hear this talked about very much. And he made the point that the tax system overtaxes the houses that are not terribly valuable and undertaxes valuable houses. And he gave this example of the 3-bedroom semi in Blackpool paying the same council tax as Buckingham Palace. And I don't understand, I'm not familiar with a lot of that tax system if you're obviously in a property that is very valuable. But I was very interested in what he had to say about that in the context of the government putting up stamp duty on houses and rental properties, and thinking that was going to make houses more expensive, but also for young people like my sons. They're starting with very high council tax in a modest flat, plus student loans, and they are just feeling very as though, they're in a very disadvantageous position, and people I get that. I just want to sort of ascertain how old they are, because when you say the twins, and I have to say in my head that just conjures up a rather delightful image of 2 bonnets in a pram, but they're obviously not. I mean, how old are your twins, your boys? They're young men, they're 30.
Right. Okay, so they're in their 30s and they're still really struggling. And do they have any kind of...
struggling, no, I wouldn't, and I'd rather not talk personally about things, because they're not struggling, because we have been able to help them. But I'm just conscious that there must be lots of young people like them who are struggling, and even though they are very fortunate to have had some help, it's not a massive amount of help, but it was some help, they still find it,
Right,
tricky.
okay, no, I take the point. Not everybody has the bank of mum and dad. Susan, thank you very much. Tim Law has got in touch from Hampshire. Hello, Tim.
Hello.
Hello. Yes, tell me, what do you make of the debate that you heard on Any Questions and what you've been hearing today?
Well, of course it's interesting, but I'm not certain that politicians fully understand what is going on. I have been on a community land trust to try and build affordable houses in our village. Not very many. We were hoping to build 12 affordable houses, which would be funded by 10 market houses.
Right.
We have the land. We have been going for 8.5 years, and we have yet to get into a position where we can even apply for planning permission.
Right, there's a sharp intake of breath from me. Why? What has got in the way? What has taken 8 years?
Because the whole process is so unbelievably labyrinthine. It would take me forever to tell you how labyrinthine it is, but it is quite extraordinary. I have been in business and run a business, and if I had to run a business and build houses, I think I would just give up. It's just almost impossible.
Okay, I know it is very complicated, but give me the headlines. Just give me the three biggest things that have got in the way here.
Right. We have first of all had to go through numerous surveys, bats, newts, dormice, and multiple other surveys. Mm-hmm. And we will probably, whoever develops this will probably have to do it all over again. So that is very long-winded and very expensive. We have spent over £160,000 of taxpayers' money to get where we are today. And I had hoped, I'm approaching my mid-70s, I had hoped that by this stage we would have sold the last house, and we haven't even got to the stage of being able to apply for planning permission.
That is so depressing, Tim, and I'm very, very grateful for your call. 03700 100 444. Peter has been in touch. No one mentioned the cost of borrowing money. Residential mortgages should be based on a single income. Many couples with families or those wanting a family face the intolerable burden of having to maintain two incomes to pay their mortgage. This is just bad for family life, writes Peter. And one more, Jonathan Wright. Rents for social housing should be proportional to wages. People shouldn't live in social housing if they can afford to buy homes or rent privately. I did say I'd be happy to circle back to our main story today, the debate, the extraordinary debate that is going on in the House of, well, now it's actually moved to the House of Lords, but the future of British Steel. And I did do a call out, I was very, very keen, to talk to somebody from Port Talbot, because Port Talbot has gone through this. This is deja vu for Port Talbot. And John Davis has called us. And John, I mean, you were a former Port Talbot worker, is that right? Working in the furnaces. Tell me a little bit about what you saw happen, what maybe Scunthorpe can take from that experience.
Well, I mean, the points I wanted to make was in relation to what Mr. Kinnock said. Basically, he said that a blast furnace can't be started up. When I got my holiday jobs in Port Talbot, was involved in relining the blast furnaces. On a regular basis, blast furnaces are closed down, and the sort of clay interior of it is removed entirely, and it's rebuilt. So it's not true to say that a blast furnace cannot be restarted. The other point I wanted to make was in relation to energy. 2 years ago, a scheme was put forward to build a tidal barrage in the Swansea Bay. That would have provided regular, reliable, green energy, which could be used now for the electric arc furnaces that are going to be installed in Port Talbot. But that was turned down by the London government. So I think on both those things, Wales has been badly treated.
Can I ask you just another question? I know it's not the reason that you called up, but I'm just interested. But once those blast furnaces were turned off in Port Talbot, I can't remember because it was a while ago now, but there was something in the region of 2,000 jobs that hung in the balance. I mean, what happened to those people who were working for the industry, who then found themselves not working for the industry?
Well, it was a regular scheduled close-down. So it was a part of the actual functioning of the steelworks. I'm not quite sure what happened, where they went, but I mean, they were actually, a lot of them would be actually involved in the work of cutting out the old clay lining. In fact, it required additional workers to come down from the Rhondda Valley in buses to help us help out. So there was extra work because of the relining processes.
Because of the relining, okay. And can you see a time in the future when those blast furnaces in Port Talbot will be switched back on?
No, I think that's the end for them. I think, to be honest, we want to look forward positively towards these electric arc furnaces, but it would be a great a benefit to the area and to the economy in general if the tidal barrage in the Swansea Valley, in Swansea Bay, had been progressed, which would provide the tidal energy is one of the, it's a regular, reliable form of energy.
Clean, reliable, and sort of, some may say, future-proof. John, thank you very much indeed. Claire says, I heard that the blast furnace that only has a 5-year lifespan. Are we building a replacement? No. And why sink money into this loss-making plant? And another one here, I lived in the Welsh Valley in the 90s, left for work, returning 25 years later. There were decimated industries scattered around like ghost buildings. Listen, thank you very much. If you didn't get on, apologies. We'll be back same time next week.
Any Answers was presented by Anita Anand and produced in Cardiff by Michelle Fleming. The assistant producer was Adrian Jones. It was a BBC Audio Wales production for Radio 4.
In an era of online polarization, propaganda and pylons, Antisocial offers a rare alternative: understanding, facts and respect. Each week, I'll take one subject that's big online and look at it from a load of different angles. I'll hear from people whose voices are often drowned out, and together we'll find out what the arguments are really about. The new series of Antisocial with me, Adam Fleming. Peace Talks for the Culture Wars on Radio 4 and BBC Sounds. Starts next Friday lunchtime at 12.
It's the Ushers now on Radio 4 and Elizabeth lends an ear.